Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and completely demystify the fascinating 3x3 matrix that actually runs the government of Pakistan. We are talking about the sheer, immense challenge of governing hundreds of millions of people spread out across some incredibly diverse geographic and cultural landscapes. I mean, you've got everything from towering snow-capped mountain ranges down to massive, sprawling deserts. So how do you distribute and actually manage power effectively on that kind of scale? Well, let's find out. Here's a quick roadmap of what we're going to cover today. First, the foundation of government. Second, the federal executive branch. Third, the federal legislative branch. Fourth, the judiciary and joint councils. Fifth, provincial governments. And finally, local government. All right, starting with Section 1, the foundation of government, 3 tiers and 3 pillars. Now, when you look at a massive country with such complex needs, you might ask yourself a pretty logical question. Why not just have a single, unified, highly centralized government that controls absolutely everything right from the capital city? Like, why bother dividing power up into all these different, complicated layers? Honestly, the answer boils down to diversity, pure and simple. Pakistan was formed back in 1947 by bringing together 4 distinct provinces, each with incredibly diverse ethnic identities. You've got the Punjabis, the Sindhis, the Baloch, and the Pashtuns. And while they definitely share a strong, unifying Islamic ideology, their day-to-day realities are just completely different. Imagine trying to govern a bustling, hyper-dense metropolitan city in Punjab using the exact same playbook you'd use for the rugged, sparsely populated, vast terrain of Balochistan. It literally wouldn't work. So a federal system was chosen to carefully balance that shared national identity with the absolute non-negotiable need for regional autonomy. Moving right along to Section 2, the federal executive branch, power at the top. So at the very top, Pakistan operates as a parliamentary democracy. This means executive power is intentionally split right down the middle. On one side, you have the president. Now, to hold this office, you must be a Muslim and at least 45 years old. The president is the head of state, basically acting as this symbolic, unifying father figure for the nation, and they hold mostly nominal powers. On the other side, though, is the prime minister. As the head of government, the prime minister is the true chief executive. Backed by their cabinet of ministers, they are the ones down in the administrative trenches every single day, wielding the actual power to run the country. But how does someone actually get to be president? It's not like they're elected by a direct, nationwide public vote. No, to make sure the massive provinces don't just completely bully the smaller ones when choosing the head of state, they use some pretty wild proportional math. They combine the total seats of the National Assembly, the Senate, and all 4 provincial assemblies. Then they scale everything down to perfectly match the size of the smallest provincial assembly, which is Balochistan, with its 65 seats. This whole complex balancing act spits out a highly specific, magical number, an electoral college of exactly 706 votes. Whoever wins the majority of those 706 votes, that's your president. Okay, Section 3, the federal legislative branch, making the laws. To actually make the laws of the land, the parliament splits into 2 distinct houses. Think of it like a massive balancing scale. The lower house, the National Assembly, represents the people directly. Its seats are based purely on sheer population size. This means a densely populated province like Punjab has a massive presence here, and these members serve 5-year terms. But to stop those highly populated areas from completely steamrolling the legislative process, you have the upper house, the Senate. The Senate is the great equalizer. Here, every single province gets equal representation, whether they have 50 million people or just 5 million. Senators serve overlapping 6-year terms, acting as this incredibly important stabilizing anchor for the whole federation. Now, keep the number 96 in your head for a second. The Senate's total seat count is actually in the middle of adjusting down to exactly 96. But why did that change? Well, historically, the Senate actually had 104 seats, and the National Assembly had 342. This recent drop happened because of a huge constitutional amendment regarding a territory known as FATA, the federally administered tribal areas. For the longest time, FATA was this semi-autonomous region directly controlled by the federal government at the center, and because of that, it had its own dedicated standalone seats in parliament. But recently, FATA was fully merged into the standard province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Since it's no longer a separate federal entity, those dedicated seats were removed. So it effectively streamlined the entire country's representation down to 96 in the Senate and 336 in the National Assembly. Which brings us to Section 4, Judiciary and Joint Councils, Interpretation and Collaboration. The judicial system here is set up in a strict, top-down hierarchy to maintain a really tight system of checks and balances.
At the very top is the Supreme Court in Islamabad. They don't just interpret the Constitution. They act as the ultimate referee if two provinces get into a major dispute. Right below them are the high courts in each province. But alongside these standard courts, you've got some very specialized institutions. The Federal Shariat Court, which was set up in 1980, makes sure laws actually align with Islamic principles. And then there's the Ombudsman Office, created in 1983. This one is absolutely crucial because it gives everyday citizens a direct, accessible channel to file complaints about administrative overreach or government mismanagement.
Now, imagine 4 highly autonomous provinces trying to share one massive river system. Without some serious coordination, it would be absolute chaos, right? That's exactly why these joint councils are kind of the unsung heroes of the Constitution. Because the provinces have so much autonomy, you need these combined bodies to manage shared resources and stop constant infighting. The Council of Common Interest tackles the really heavy disputes, like exactly how river water or natural gas gets divvied up between regions. Meanwhile, you have the Planning Commission and the National Economic Council, and their job is to synchronize economic and financial policies across all borders. It keeps the whole nation moving in the same fundamental direction, despite some very deep regional differences.
All right, Section 5, the Provincial Governments, Regional Autonomy.
If this structure sounds a bit familiar, well, it absolutely should. The provinces operate almost like autonomous mini-countries, and they perfectly mirror that federal separation of powers we just talked about. Instead of a president, the province gets a governor. This is a largely nominal figurehead appointed from the center, though they do get some pretty significant emergency powers if a crisis or martial law hits. And instead of a prime minister, the true regional power is held by the chief minister. Elected directly by the provincial assembly, the chief minister completely runs the region's administration. They steer everything from local healthcare all the way to regional infrastructure. When you actually look at the size of these provincial assemblies, the sheer demographic realities of Pakistan just hit you right in the face. Check this out. Punjab has a massive 371 seats, which totally reflects its booming population. Sindh has 168, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has 124, and Baluchistan has just 65. I mean, Punjab has more than 5 times the legislative seats of Baluchistan. It's a really stark disparity, and it perfectly highlights exactly why that Senate exists, to balance things out at the federal level. Oh, and importantly, these regional assemblies are legally required to have built-in reserved quotas for women and minorities. It guarantees those diverse voices actually get heard at the local level. And you know, this autonomy isn't just some nice idea on paper. Thanks to a landmark piece of legislation called the 18th Amendment, the federal government can't just dictate who runs the provinces from the capital anymore. Because the ethnic and demographic makeup of each region is so incredibly distinct, you routinely see fierce political rivals governing different parts of the country at the exact same time. For example, a political party that absolutely dominates in Sindh might have literally zero presence in Punjab or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The 18th Amendment fiercely protects their constitutional right to rule independently, based entirely on their own specific local demographic mandates. And finally, Section 6, Local Government and Decentralization. Power to the people. The 1973 Constitution envisions a system where power isn't just hoarded away in these wealthy provincial capitals. It's supposed to be constantly decentralized downwards. It flows from the district level, which is headed by a mayor or nazim and their own district assembly, down to the tehsil level, and ultimately landing right in your very own neighborhood at the union council level. Now, a union council could represent just a cluster of streets in a big city or a few linked villages out in a rural area. It is designed to be the most direct, boots-on-the-ground form of democracy in the entire country. The whole goal of this hyper-local tier is true decentralization. I mean, why should a citizen have to travel for hours to some provincial capital just to get a broken neighborhood streetlight fixed or a local water pipe repaired? When it's fully implemented, these district assemblies pass their own local budgets and manage up to 20 distinct local departments. Now, I will say the exact structure varies pretty heavily from province to province today, but historically, we saw this system reach its absolute peak during the 2001 to 2005 era. During that window, massive financial and administrative power was aggressively pushed right down to local mayors, empowering them to totally bypass all that provincial red tape. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. The Constitution of Pakistan creates this, frankly, brilliant, robust matrix of power on paper. It balances federal unity, provincial autonomy, and specialized judicial oversight. But you know, the ultimate test of any democracy isn't happening in the grand halls of Islamabad. It's happening right in your neighborhood. Will the constitutional goal of true local decentralization ever permanently empower the everyday citizen at the union council level? Or will power remain forever hoarded at the very top? That is the real question going forward, and understanding this three-tiered system is your first crucial step to finding the answer.